All right, with us today we have Josh Angell. Josh is with the firm Moore, Ellrich, and Neal in the West Palm Beach, Florida area. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Josh, now you are working in forensic accounting and business valuation, right?
Correct.
Why don't you talk about the kind of work that you do?
Well, we primarily do, at least I do, business valuation primarily for high net worth divorce clients. And so what that involves is assessing the value of a business. We get into the financial analysis of a company, quantifying that firm's cost of capital, getting into complex valuation issues like the valuation of an S corporation or quantifying discounts, looking at startup companies, and in the context of a divorce, coming up with a value of the business for purposes of marital dissolution and equitable distribution. We also do some work on lost profits and M&A transactions and things like that, which is obviously an interesting area of our profession.
Okay. Now, you're not a CPA, right?
Correct.
But in terms of education, you've got a finance degree and an accounting degree, so you've sort of got both sides of the equation, so to speak, of accounting and finance.
Yes.
And then you have some certifications. What certifications do you have?
So I'm a Chartered Financial Analyst.
CFA.
And I have an Accredited Senior Appraiser's designation, which I actually just got, I think, a month ago.
Okay.
So that was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. How long have you been working in business valuation?
I think it will be 7 years this upcoming May.
Okay.
So it's been some time, I think. I mean, maybe not relative to your seasoned work career, but
we all started somewhere, right? Okay.
But it's been some time for me, you know.
Right.
So.
Now, do you do anything other than business valuation? Do you do like economic damages, lost profits? Tell us a little bit about that, generally speaking.
Sure. So we certainly have been involved in some pretty highly litigious economic damages and lost profits cases, which generally involve estimating the economic loss in a business's value, or estimating the profits that have been lost due to an infringing event, such as, say, stealing someone's trade secrets. In fact, we were just involved in a engagement where a company based here in South Florida who was involved in the marine industry had allegedly stole the trade secrets that were utilized to service the ships that are deployed off of Carnival's cruise line ships. And so we had to estimate whether there was an impairment in the profitability of the company as a consequence of stealing, allegedly, those trade secrets.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on the work that you actually did in that project?
So we did a lot of stuff. I mean, one of the interesting things we had to do was we had to somehow quantify whether there had in fact been a loss. So we had represented the defendant in that case, and we were doing a rebuttal report against the plaintiff's expert testimony. So my job in that case really focused on critiquing that report. So we developed arguments economically as to why that report had problems in it. The biggest...
So you're preparing a report on somebody else's report on the other side.
Correct.
So you're sort of critiquing or criticizing their weaknesses in that. Okay.
And so we had, after reviewing her report, I had developed several critiques with that particular report. One of the big ones was how she had estimated the cost of goods sold for this particular business. So we had to get into different measurement techniques as to how to properly measure cost of goods sold. I performed a statistical study to develop a correlation between costs and revenues to use that as a benchmark in the case. Another big issue in that case was the revenues that had been lost and the product line specifically. So we had to get really deep into the invoice records to determine which invoices actually corresponded to the allegedly lost trade secrets or infringed trade secrets. And so what that involved, I literally had to sit down and go through every invoice and manually inspect them and kind of figure out whether certain invoices match to the sales that had allegedly been stolen.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your firm just a little bit. So tell us a little bit about your firm and the geographic span that your firm works around.
Right. So we do a lot of divorce work, which would primarily concentrate with high net worth individuals in the state of Florida. But
Now, your firm is an accounting firm?
we are an accounting firm,
So
yes.
it's more or less a local firm based in Palm Beach County area?
And we have a satellite office in Miami that we just opened.
Okay, all right, so it's an accounting firm, and your particular area does a lot of high-end divorce, and there's a lot of them in Palm Beach, right?
Yes,
Okay.
for sure. But despite that many of our clients reside in the state, our work really is quite expansive on a national and even global level, because a lot of these high net worth people have assets everywhere. So, we may be doing work for someone who has a house in Palm Beach, but their business is located in Boston, Massachusetts, and they have a brokerage account in the Cayman Islands. And so our work can be pretty comprehensive on a global basis, but I'd say...
Do you get to travel some of those places?
We do, and it's quite fun. In fact, in the Boston case, we went up to Boston. We had another business that was in Ohio. I'd say traveling for me, might be 10 to 20% of my work time is out visiting a client's business. Particularly in business valuation, I know we have to do a site review. So when we value a big company, we have to go down to the operations, and if they're located in California, well, I'm going to be on a plane.
Okay.
So.
All right. Can you talk about a couple of interesting projects that you've worked on over your career?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a pretty interesting project right now, a valuation engagement for a shareholder dispute involving a company that has developed software to track the medicinal marijuana and recreational marijuana that's taking place globally. So it's kind of a very emerging industry. And so we were retained to value this startup business that's recently raised about, a $40 million valuation. There wasn't many in particular specifics that made it stand out, but what was interesting about it is getting to understand that type of business. You're dealing in an emerging marketplace. You have to learn about this highly risky type of business that has no demonstrated history of earnings power, and we have to figure out methodologies to value these companies, which, I don't know, I find that type of stuff kind of intellectually challenging.
So what are you looking to, a crystal ball or the Ouija board?
Well, fortunately for us, in that case, we actually had a precedent transaction that had taken place about, 3 months before the, a damaging event, I'll call it. So we were able to use a method called the back solve method to kind of imply from that transaction what the value of the equity was. Okay. What we also did, though, is, there are methods called a probability weighted expected return model, where we kind of look at scenarios. We say, okay, well, we have this startup company, and if it becomes successful, here's what its value will be at IPO. If it becomes, say, half as successful, here's what its value would be in a private sale, and we talk to management about those expectations and kind of...
So it's sort of like, if the company's optimistic, here's an estimate of their financial results. Right. If it's pessimistic, here's the estimate, and here's a middle case.
Right.
And then somewhere you've got to apply some professional judgment saying, well, here's the probability under optimistic, pessimistic, and most probable. Okay. Any other, another interesting project you worked on?
I'm trying to think of something recently that we were engaged in that would, the damages case we worked on I felt was very interesting. Again, the same company I mentioned before that had allegedly stolen trade secrets.
What kind of secret? I mean...
Yeah, so what the company did is they serviced the lifeboats on the major cruise liners in Fort Lauderdale, right here. And so the plaintiff had alleged that the defendants had stolen their proprietary trade secrets to service these technical davits, which are the crane systems that hoist the boat, and the winch, which releases the boat into the water. And so that case was really interesting because when you do a trade secrets damages case, you have to make sure that the damage relates to the use of the trade secret. So in this particular case, much of the sales that our company was actually making did not really relate to this part, this davit and the winch. It really related to the boat and the hook system, which was a separate component. And so we really had to get under the documents to kind of forensically investigate whether the sales our company was generating directly correlated with the use of that secret. And so
this is a lot more complicated than just income approach, market approach, asset approach.
Yes, in this case had been going on for about 5 years in a highly litigious environment where our report, through that analysis of looking at what was really being sold, showed damages to the tune of, I don't know, 1,000 times less than the other expert. I mean, there was a big difference in opinion in this case. And so that case was just very interesting because you really had to get under all of the facts. And it wasn't just kind of like a sugar-coated, okay, I took the income and I capitalized it and here's what the value is. I mean, you really had to know this business, and that required us to sit down and go through the invoices, really understand the different, in their accounting system, the different costs that related to each line of business to develop an informed estimate. And this was important, this stuff, it affects people's lives. Right. I mean, right, we had a plaintiff who was saying, look, you owe our client $9 million, and we were there to illustrate, well, that was just patently wrong. It was more like $20,000, right. Okay, once you did this analysis. So that was a cool case.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you worked on this, but I know of your firm, and I know some folks there. Can you mention some names of some famous divorces that you guys have worked on in your firm?
Yeah, so we did Jeff Gordon's divorce.
He's a NASCAR driver.
Right, yeah. So a while ago we did Chris Carter's divorce, which was a football player. We were interviewed for Tiger's divorce. Okay. We didn't get that one, though. But that would have been a cool divorce to do. We've done some pretty high-profile business people that, I don't know, maybe no one's familiar with. Yeah, no, not Donald Trump, yeah. That'd be an interesting one, though. But we've done some high-profile divorces, and again, I don't think anyone will know that we did a Russell case, which was an interesting valuation. You may have heard about that one, I don't know. But yeah.
Well, good. Now, you have the accounting background, education, and finance degree as well, too. So how did you get from there to become interested in forensic accounting and business valuation?
Well, that's an interesting story. So when I was in college, I had a very big interest in the stock market. Okay, how to buy and sell stocks, how to make money in the stock market. And I was 17 or 18, I picked up a book called The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham, who, if anyone doesn't know, that's more...
Famous book, goes back decades.
Yeah, which he was the teacher of Warren Buffett.
Value investing.
Value investing,
right.
There you go. And in that book, there's a very important valuation principle for buying common stocks, and that was to buy them at a margin of safety. And that principle is essentially, well, you buy businesses at a discount to what they're worth. And I said, wow, well, that's a really great concept, but how do you figure out how much the business is worth? Okay, and that led to a career in understanding how businesses are worth. Hence,
intellectual curiosity affected your career.
That's right. And so
it was sort of happenstance, right?
It was happenstance for me. And so what happened is I read a lot of text on valuation, and I met
on your own?
On my own. Yeah. I thought the concepts were interesting, and it kind of led me to this firm. I said, well, listen, I need to learn from an expert. And so I got a job at a company doing forensic work and becoming an expert, or at least the pursuit of becoming an expert. I don't think I'm there yet. Okay. But in valuing closely held companies. Right. And that kind of then led to doing damages and all these different things, which are really interrelated because, for example, if you do a damages case and you need to value, I don't know, a patent, well, a patent is an asset of a business. Right. And so you have to figure out the valuation methodology there. So that's always just intellectual right. curiosity.
I've always learning. So after you got out of school, you still had to keep learning.
That's for sure in this
right.
business. I think that every day is learning.
You're learning something new.
Every day.
Right.
Because you're learning different businesses, you're learning different industries.
Not routine.
Not at all. I don't think any valuation we've done has ever been the same.
Right. Can you talk about, from your perspective, what you think the current and future demand for business valuation and forensic accounting services are?
I think it's big. I think that there is an emerging trend, both domestically in the United States and globally, for business valuation services in particular, because, for example, in the fair value world, I mean, there's big pushes.
Fair
Value accounts for accounting. And I know this is not CPA centric necessarily for everybody, but in the fair value world, there's a big push right now to account for things at their fair value, not their historical cost. And so there's going to be big demand there, number one, for the business valuation services. You have a lot of retirees in the United States, baby boomers, people who unfortunately will be passing away, or at least gifting their businesses to their children.
Sort of like somebody my age? Or?
Maybe a little older. I think you got some time left, but nevertheless, for people who are just entering a graduate program and looking to enter this career, there's going to be a long demand as people age. Their businesses need to be conveyed in some type of asset transfer, whether it be a sale, whether it be through gifting, or whether it unfortunately be through death, and that's going to require significant valuation expertise. Divorces aren't going away. Right. So that's going to be here for a long time too, and I think on the fraudulent side, our economy, not necessarily a fraud slide, but the economic damages side, our economy is becoming increasingly complex. Right. Okay, we have complex financial products. We've moved away from an industrialized economy into an intangible, asset-driven economy. So you're going to need to know these things, right, because that's going to be the center of our legal and contractual disputes for these big corporations. I mean, every day, I get these alerts on my phone about lawsuits that are going on. I think what Apple just sued Fitbit or Fitbook. It makes the little watch for a patent infringement suit. I mean, these things are going to be
a lawsuit that's going to be litigated and have experts and all that.
Yeah, and then you got people like El Chapo, who have massive amounts of money that. Obviously, forensic accountants are very useful for it in the case of the FBI and things, and I think those things are going to continue into the perpetual future.
You're 7 years into your career in forensic accounting and business valuation. What traits are needed, do you think, by folks getting into this area for them to be successful in these areas? So,
in business valuation, I think you need to, first of all, command a very strong set of skills in financial theory. Okay? So having a background in finance, having a background, maybe your CFA or going that track, personally, I think it's important to have that. I think there is a big difference between some valuation practitioners who know their financial theory and those who do not. I think that you need to be very detail-oriented as a person, particularly in the forensic side, to make sure that you proverbially cross your T's and dot your I's in every aspect, especially if you're going to be doing litigation-related work where you need to testify and expert testimony.
Examination by a lawyer.
Yeah. I think another extremely important skill set is to have excellent oral communication and written communication skills, because that is pervasive within our industry. The ability to take what are very complex economic concepts and dumb them down, so to speak, for people to understand, your attorneys, a trial court, is an extremely important skill set to have, because if people don't understand what you're talking about, you're not going to win your case. And you're probably not going to get hired for new business. But
it's a reputational business.
It is a reputational business, and I think that those who are able to take these, again, what are very complex topics. I mean, you tell someone what a weighted average cost of capital is, or what a Black-Scholes option pricing model is, or how to value a bond that has an embedded derivative in it. That's over most people's heads, and if you can have the ability, the skill set to take that concept and put it in plain speak to somebody. Right. That's a critical skill.
That's a talent.
That is a talent, and it's hard. Something I haven't certainly that skill set I haven't exactly.
Teaching and speaking. You're here at the conference. Right. You're speaking.
I am.
That helps refine your presentation skills.
It does, and I think that in addition to your oral communication skills, that your written communication skills are obviously very important as well, because. In our business, I guess your business valuation report or your damages report is really the mechanism of communicating your opinion. In fact, it is, and not like it is the mechanism for communicating your opinion, and people need to understand it. It needs to be fluid It needs to be organized and concise, and if you're all over the place, you're not really going to be successful. And so I think the three of those things, oral communication skills, which by the way I think ranks, I've read some studies, I think that ranks as the number one demand trait that
For testifying
experts and different attorneys seek in their testifying experts. So that financial knowledge and being meticulous, I think, are some pretty important skill sets to have.
Okay, great. Josh Angell, I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.